In 1947, a 31-year-old copywriter at the Philadelphia advertising agency N.W. Ayer named Francis Geraghty stayed late one night to come up with a tagline for a struggling client. The client was a South African mining company called De Beers. Their problem was simple. Americans had stopped buying diamond engagement rings. Before the Great Depression, diamond engagement rings had been a minority practice in the United States, about 1 in 10 brides. That night, Francis Geraghty wrote 4 words on a yellow pad: "A diamond is forever." Over the next 50 years, De Beers paid the N.W. Ayer agency roughly $200 million to push those 4 words into every magazine, radio program, television network, and Hollywood screenplay in the United States. By 1990, 80% of American brides received a diamond engagement ring at the proposal. By 2000, the number was over 90. Ad age named "A Diamond is Forever," the slogan of the 20th century. A genuine cultural tradition, the diamond engagement ring was invented by one copywriter in 1947 to clear the inventory of one mining company. Every single bride and groom in America for the next 8 decades took that invented tradition at face value, walked into a jewelry store, and paid $5,000 for a small rock. That is the only story you need to understand the diamond business. The diamond was never the product. The story was the product. And the company that told the story for 100 years got paid every time anyone repeated it. For most of the 20th century, one company controlled roughly 85% of every rough diamond mined on Earth. That company was De Beers. Founded in 1888 in South Africa by an English colonial mining magnate named Cecil Rhodes. Yes, that Cecil Rhodes, with backing from the Rothschild banking house in London. By the 1930s, control had passed to a German Jewish emigre named Ernest Oppenheimer, whose family ran De Beers, along with the parent conglomerate Anglo-American, for the next 80 years until they sold the family's remaining stake to Anglo for $5.1 billion in 2011. 85% of all diamonds in the world, one company, 3 generations of one family, for 123 years. If you bought a diamond mine tomorrow, this is what you'd actually be buying. Then there's the cartel. The mechanism by which De Beers held that share for 100 years, the most successful price cartel in modern industrial history. The cartel operated through an entity called the Central Selling Organization, headquartered in central London. The CSO had one rule: De Beers would either buy, partner with, or pressure every diamond-producing mine on Earth into selling its rough stones exclusively through the CSO. If you discovered a new diamond field, De Beers would buy you out, sign you to an exclusive agreement, or flood the market with similar stones to ruin your price. The CSO then drip-fed diamonds into the polishing trade through a small group of buyers called site holders, maybe 80 of them globally at the peak. Each site holder was invited to the CSO offices in London 10 times a year, presented with a sealed cardboard box of mixed rough diamonds and a fixed price. Take it or leave it. Refuse the box, you were dropped from the site holder list. Your career was over. When demand for diamonds rose, the CSO released slightly more stone. When demand fell, the CSO bought up the surplus and stockpiled it. In the mid-1990s, De Beers held a strategic stockpile worth roughly $5 billion in a vault. The market never saw it. The price stayed where De Beers wanted. The diamond business was not a market. It was a single channel disguised as a market. Then there's the manufactured tradition. The most important mechanism, and the one without which none of the cartel arithmetic above would have mattered. A diamond, as a geological object, is one of the more common gem-grade minerals on Earth. Industrial diamonds have been mass-produced in laboratories since the 1950s. there is no shortage of carbon crystals. The rarity of a diamond was, and always was, a function of how many De Beers chose to release. So De Beers had a problem the cartel could not solve. If diamonds are not actually rare, why would anyone pay more for them? The answer was, they wouldn't, unless you gave them a reason. And the reason had to be cultural, not economic. Starting in 1938, the NWA agency built a long-running campaign to embed the diamond into one specific American social ritual, the engagement. Magazine ads showed young men giving diamond rings. Newsreels showed Hollywood stars wearing them. The agency placed diamonds into screenplays, into movie wardrobes, into newspaper society columns. They distributed lecture kits to high school home economics classes, explaining that the proper engagement ring should cost 2 months' salary, a number invented by Ayer and reinforced for 60 years. By the time Marilyn Monroe sang "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend" in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes in 1953, the cultural framework had been in place for 15 years. The song was written for the film, not commissioned by De Beers. By that point, De Beers no longer needed to commission the culture. The culture was advertising for them, for free, forever. A diamond engagement ring is not a tradition. It is a marketing campaign that ran for 50 years until it became indistinguishable from a tradition. Then there's the markup. The reason a diamond investment has, historically, been one of the worst consumer investments available. Retail markup on a diamond at sale is typically 400 to 600% over the underlying rough cost. The wholesaler buys the stone, the polisher cuts it, the jeweler displays it. Each takes a margin. Now look at what happens when you try to sell it. The resale value of a typical retail diamond is between 30 and 50% of what the consumer paid. A $5,000 engagement ring resells for $1,500 to $2,500. The dollar value evaporates the moment the box leaves the store. Edward J. Epstein wrote a famous Atlantic Monthly piece on this in 1982 titled, "Have You Ever Tried to Sell a Diamond?" The answer is yes. And you discovered that the cartel-built market was only ever a one-way channel. The cartel set the price you paid. The cartel did not set the price you could resell at. The secondary market told you the truth. The price of a diamond was the cost of the story attached to it. When the story was over, the rock was just a rock. Then there's the Blood Diamond chapter, the decade when the cartel's discipline almost shattered. In the 1990s, civil wars in Angola, Sierra Leone, and the Democratic Republic of Congo became partially funded by smuggled diamonds. The UNITA rebel group in Angola alone moved roughly $3 to $4 billion in conflict diamonds through Antwerp and Tel Aviv during the decade. Diamonds entered the legitimate market through middlemen who didn't ask where the stones came from. In 2003, the United Nations established the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme, a multilateral agreement among about 85 countries requiring rough diamond exports to come with a certificate of conflict-free origin. The system was riddled with holes. Global Witness withdrew in 2011, calling it ineffective. But the Kimberley process did serve one function. It gave De Beers a clean story to tell consumers. Then there's Russia, the first real competitor to De Beers. A Russian state-owned mining company called Alrosa became, by carat volume, the largest producer of rough diamonds in the world around 2009. Alrosa now produces roughly 33 million carats a year, slightly above De Beers' 32 million. The two cartels operated in uneasy alignment for years. In 2023, the G7 announced sanctions on Russian rough diamonds. The ban took effect in March 2024 for stones above 1 carat and extended to smaller stones in September. Roughly 25 to 30% of global rough supply removed from G7 markets overnight. Then there's the lab-grown crash, the story that breaks the cartel for good. A diamond is just crystallized carbon. By the 2010s, two technologies, high pressure, high temperature, and chemical vapor deposition, had improved to the point where lab-grown diamonds were optically and chemically indistinguishable from mined ones. Same crystal structure, same hardness, certified by the same gemological institutes. In 2018, lab-grown diamonds accounted for about 2% of US engagement rings. By 2024, the share was over 20%. The reason was price. Massive Chinese factories, primarily in Henan and Shandong provinces, scaled lab-grown production through the 2020s. The wholesale cost of a 1-carat lab-grown stone fell from around $5,000 in 2016 to $700 in 2023 to roughly $300 to $500 by 2024. A 90% wholesale collapse in 8 years. Lab-grown is now sold at retail for 1/5 to 1/10 the price of an equivalent natural stone. The consumer cannot, with the naked eye, tell the difference. The diamond cartel's 100-year defense, that diamonds are uniquely rare and uniquely valuable, collapsed the moment you could buy an identical-looking diamond in a Chinese factory for 10% of the price. Last one, the capitulation. In 2018, De Beers itself launched a lab-grown brand called Lightbox, priced at $800 per carat, deliberately positioned to crash margins for independent lab-grown competitors. The strategy did not work. By 2024, Anglo-American, the parent that had owned De Beers since the 1920s, wrote down the book value of De Beers by $1.6 billion. De Beers' rough sales fell roughly 36% in the first half of 2024. In May 2024, Anglo-American announced it would divest De Beers entirely. The company that had defined the diamond business for 136 years was now for sale, at a valuation below what it had been carried at for decades. The cartel was over. The market it built had finally invented its way around it. Sit with what the diamond business actually was. A British colonialist bought up South African farmland in 1871, consolidated the mines, and handed control to a German Jewish mining dynasty that ran it for 80 years. They funded a Philadelphia advertising agency to invent the diamond engagement ring as a universal American tradition. They held back supply from the market for 100 years to keep prices high. They convinced 100 million American couples that a small piece of crystallized carbon was the proper symbol of permanent love. They sold those stones at 400 to 600% markup. They held the cartel together through 2 world wars, a Great Depression, and the discovery of new fields in Australia and Russia and Canada. What broke them was not war, it was not regulation, it was not consumer backlash. It was a factory in Henan province producing a chemically identical product for 10% of the price. The De Beers slogan still hangs in jewelry stores. A diamond is forever. It was true for 100 years, not because diamonds were forever, but because the cartel that controlled them was. The cartel cracked. The marketing line outlived the empire that wrote it. The mine doesn't matter anymore. The story is what mattered. And the people who wrote the story for 100 years are the people who got paid.